Hello, I'm Jada, and today I'm going to be doing a vocal read of the Java The Complete Reference Ninth Edition Comprehensive Coverage of the Java Language by Herbert Schmild, Oracle Press. The Complete Reference Java Ninth Edition Trademark. About the author. Best-selling author Herbert Schmild has written extensively about programming for nearly 3 decades and is leading authority on the Java language. His books have sold millions of copies worldwide and have been translated into all major foreign languages. He is the author of numerous books on Java, including Java, A Beginner's Guide, Herbert Schmidt's Java Programming Cookbook, and Swing, A Beginner's Guide. He has also written extensively about C, C++, and C#. Although interested in all facets of computing, his primary focus is computer languages, including compilers, interpreters, and robotic control languages. He also has an active interest in the standardization of languages. Schmidt holds both graduate and undergraduate degrees from the University of Illinois. He can be reached by consulting office at 217-586-4683. His website is www.herbschmidt.com. About the technical editor. Dr. Danny Coward has worked on all editions of Java Platform. He led the definition of Java Service into the first version of the Java EE platform and beyond. Web Service in the Java ME platform, and the strategy and planning for Java SE7. He founded Java FX technology and most recently designed the largest addition to the Java EE7 standard, the Java WebSocket API. From coding in Java to designing APIs with industry experts to serving for several years as an executive to the Java community process, he has a uniquely broad perspective into multiple aspects of Java technology. Additionally, he is the author of Java WebSocket Programming and an upcoming Java book on Java EE. Dr. Coward holds bachelor's, master's, and doctorates in mathematics from the University of Oxford. The Complete Reference, Java 9th Edition, Herbert Schmidt. Copyright 2014 by McGraw-Hill Education Publisher, all rights reserved, printed in the United States of America. Except as permitted under the Copyright Act of 1976, no part of this publication may be reproduced or distributed in any form or by any means, or stored in a database or retrieval system, without the prior written permission of publisher, with the exemption that the program listing may be entered, stored, and executed in a computer system, but they may not be reproduced for publication. ISBN 97807180856-9, MHID 007180856-6. Ebook conversion by Canevo Publisher Services. Version 1. The material in this ebook also appears in the print version of this title, ISBN 978-071-80855-2, MHID 007180855-8. McGraw-Hill Education ebooks are available at special quantity discounts to use as premiums and sales promotion or for use in corporate training programs. To contact a representative, please visit and contact us pages at www.mhprofessional.com. All trademarks are trademarks of their respective owners. Rather than put a trademark symbol after every occurrence of a trademark name, we use the names in an editorial fashion only, and to the benefit of the trademark owner, with no intention of infringement of the trademark. Where such designations appear in the book, they have been printed with the initial caps. Information has been obtained by McGraw-Hill Education from sources believed to be reliable. However, because of the possibility of human or mechanical error by our sources, McGraw-Hill Education or others, McGraw-Hill Education does not guarantee the accuracy, adequacy, or completeness of any information and is not responsible for any errors or omissions or the results obtained from the use of such information. Oracle and Java are registered trademarks of Oracle Corporation and or its affiliates. All other trademarks are properly of their respective owners, and McGraw-Hill Education makes no claim of ownership by mention of the products that contain these marks. Screen displays of copyrighted Oracle software programs have been reproduced herein with the permission of Oracle Corporation and its affiliates. Terms of use. This is copyrighted work and McGraw-Hill Education, McGraw-Hill, and its licensors receive all rights in and to the work. Use of this work is subject to these terms, except as permitted under the copyright law of 1976 and the right to store and retrieve one copy of the work. You may not decompile, disassemble, reverse engineer, reproduce, modify, create derivative works based upon, transmit, distribute, disseminate, sell, publish, or sublicense the work or any part of it without McGraw-Hill's prior consent. You may use the work for your own non-commercial and personal use. Any other use of the work is strictly prohibited. Your right to use the work may be terminated if you fail to comply with these terms. The work is provided as is. McGraw-Hill and its licensors make no guarantees or warranties as the accuracy, adequacy, or completeness of or results to be obtained from using the work, including any information that can be accessed through the work via hyperlink or otherwise, and expressly disclaim any warranty, express or implied, including but not limited to implied warranties of marketability or fitness for a particular purpose. McGraw-Hill and its licensors do not warrant or guarantee that the functions contained in the work will meet your requirements, or that its operation will be uninterpreted or error-free. Neither McGraw-Hill nor its licensors shall be liable to you or anyone else for any inaccuracy, error, or omission, regardless of cause, in the work or any damages resulting therefrom. McGraw-Hill has no responsibility for the content of any information accessed through the work. Under no circumstances shall McGraw-Hill and/or its licensors be liable for indirect, incidental, special, punitive, consequential, or similar damages that result from the use or inability to use the work, even if any of them has been advised of the possibility of such damages. This limitation of liability shall apply to any claim or cause whatsoever, whether such claim or cause arises in contract, tort, or otherwise. Contents at a glance. Part 1. The Java language. 1. The history and evolution of Java. Page 3. 2. An overview of Java. Page 17. 3. Data types, variables, and arrays. Page 35. 4. Operators. 61. 5. Control statements. Page 81. 6. Introducing classes. Page 109. 7. A closer look at methods and classes. Page 129. 8. Inheritance. Page 161. 9. Packages and interfaces. Page 187. 10. Exception handling. Page 213. 11. Multi-threaded programming. Page 233. 12. Numerations, autoboxing, and annotations, metadata. Page 263. 13. I/O, applets, and other topics. Page 301. 14. Generics. Page 337. 15. Lambda expressions. Page 381. Part 2. The Java library. 16. String handling. Page 413. 17. Exploring JavaLang. Page 441. 18. Java Util Part 1. The Collections Framework. Page 497. 19. Java Util Part 2. More utility classes. Page 579. 20. Input-output Exploring Java I/O, page 641. 21. Exploring NIO, page 689. 22. Networking, page 727. 23. The Applet class, page 747. 24. Event handling, page 769. 25. Introduction to AWT working with Windows, graphics, and text, page 797. 26. Using AWT controls, layout managers, and menus, page 833. 27. Images, page 885. 28. The concurrency utilities, page 915. 29. The Stream API, page 965. 30. Regular expressions and other packages, page 991. Part 3. Introducing GUI programming with Swing. 31. Introducing Swing, page 1021. 32. Exploring Swing, page 1041. 33. Introducing Swing menus, page 1069. Part 4. Introducing GUI programming with JavaFX. 34. Introducing JavaFX GUI programming, page 1105. 35. Exploring JavaFX controls, page 1125. 36. Introducing JavaFX menus, 1171. Part 5. Applying Java. 37. Java Beans, 1199. 38. Introducing Servlets, page 1211. Appendix. Using Java's documentation comments, page 1035. Index, page 1243. Contents. Preface. Part 1. The Java Language. Chapter 1. The History and Evolution of Java. Page 3. Java Lineage. Page 3. The Birth of Modern Programming, C. Page 4. C++, The Next Step. Page 5. The Stage is Set for Java. Page 6. The Creation of Java. Page 6. The C# Connection. Page 8. How Java Changed the Internet. Page 8. Java Applets. Page 8. Security. Page 9. Portability. Page 9. Java Magic, the bytecode. Page 9. Servlets, Java on the server side. Page 10. The Java buzzwords. Page 10. Simple. Page 11. Object-oriented. Page 11. Robust. Page 11. Multi-threaded. Page 12. Architecture neutral. Page 12. Interpreted and high performance. Page 12. Distributed. Page 12. Dynamic. Page 13. The Evolution of Java. Page 13. Java SE 8. Page 15. A Culture of Innovation. Page 16. Chapter 2. An Overview of Java. Page 17. Object-Oriented Programming. Page 17. Two Paradigms. Page 17. Abstraction. Page 18. The Three OOP Principles. Page 18. A first simple program, page 23. Entering the program, page 23. Compiling the program, page 23. A closer look at the first program, page 24. A second short program, page 26. Two control statements, page 28. The if statement, page 28. The for loop, page 29. Using blocks of code, page 30. Lexical issues, page 32. Whitespace, page 32. Identifiers, page 32. Literals, page 32. Comments, page 32. Separators, page 33. The Java keywords, page 33. The Java class libraries, page 34. Chapter 3, Data Types, Variables, and Arrays, page 35. Java is a strongly typed language, page 35. The primitive types, page 35. Integers, page 36. Byte, page 36. Short, page 37. Int, page 37. Long, page 37. Floating point types, page 38. Float, page 38. Double, page 38. Characters, page 39. Booleans, page 40. A closer look at literals, page 41. Integer literals, page 41. Floating point literals, page 42. Boolean literals, page 43. Character literals, page 43. String literals, page 43. Variables, page 44. Declaring a variable, page 44. Dynamic initialization, page 45. The scope and lifetime of variables, page 45. Type conversions and casting, page 48. Java's automatic conversions, page 48. Casting incompatible types, page 48. Automatic type promotion and automatic type promotion in expressions, page 50. The type promotion rules, page 50. Arrays, page 51. One-dimensional arrays, page 51. Multi-dimensional arrays, page 54. Alternative array declaration syntax, page 58. A few words about strings, page 58. A note to C/C++ programmers about pointers, page 59. Chapter 4, Operators, 61. Arithmetic operators, page 61. The basic arithmetic operators, page 62. The modulus operator, page 63. Arithmetic compound assignments operators, page 63. Increment and decrement, page 64. The bitwise operators, page 66. The bitwise logical operators, page 67. The left shift, page 69. The right shift, page 70. The unsigned right shift, page 72. Bitwise operator compound assignments, page 73. Relational operators, page 74. Boolean logical operators, page 75. Short circuit logical operators, page 76. The assignment operator, page 77. The question operator, page 77. Operator precedence, page 78. Using parentheses, page 79. Chapter 5, Control Statements, page 81. Java Selection Statements, page 81. If, page 81. Switch, page 84. Iteration Statements, page 89. While, page 89. Do while, page 90. For, page 93. The for each version of the for loop, page 97. Nested loops, page 102. Jump statements, page 102. Using break, page 102. Using continue, page 106. Chapter 6, Introducing Classes, page 109. Class Fundamentals, page 109. The general form of class, page 109. A simple class, page 110. Declaring objects, page 113. A closer look at new, page 113. Assigning object reference variables, page 115. Introducing methods, page 115. Adding a method to the box class, page 116. Returning a value, page 118. Adding a method that takes parameters, page 119. Constructors, page 121. Parameterized constructors, page 123. The keyword, page 124. Instance variable hiding, page 125. Garbage collection, page 125. The finalize parentheses method, page 126. A stack class, page 126. Chapter 7, A closer look at methods and classes, page 129. Overloading methods, page 129. Overloading constructors, page 132. Using objects as parameters, page 134. A closer look at argument passing, page 136. Returning objects, page 138. Recursion, page 139. Introducing access control, page 141. Understanding static, page 145. Introducing final, page 146. Arrays revised, page 147. Introducing nested and inner classes, page 149. Exploring the string class, page 152. Using command line arguments, page 154. Var args, variable length arguments, page 155. Overloading var args methods, page 158. Var args and ambiguity, page 159. Chapter 8, Inheritance, page 161. Inheritance Basics, page 161. Member Access and Inheritance, page 163. A more practical example, page 164. A superclass variable can reference a subclass object, page 166. Using super, page 167. Using super to call superclass constructors, page 167. A second use for super, page 170. Creating a multi-level hierarchy, page 171. When constructors are executed, page 174. Method overriding, page 175. Dynamic method dispatch, page 178. Why overridden methods, page 179. Applying method overriding, page 180. Using abstract classes, page 181. Using final with inheritance, page 184. Using final to prevent overriding, page 184. Using final to prevent inheritance, page 185. The object class, page 185. Chapter 9, Packages and Inheritance, page 187. Packages, page 187. Defining a package, page 188. Finding packages and class path, page 188. A short package example, page 189. Access protection, page 190. An access example, page 191. Importing packages, page 194. Interfaces, page 196. Defining an interface, page 196. Implementing interfaces, page 197. Nested interfaces, page 200. Applying interfaces, page 201. Variables in interfaces, page 204. Interfaces can be extended, page 206. Default interface methods, page 207. Default method fundamentals, page 208. A more practical example, page 209. Multiple inheritance issues, page 210. Using static methods in an interface, page 211. Final thoughts on packages and interfaces, page 212. Chapter 10, Exception Handling, page 213. Exception Handling Fundamentals, page 213. Exception Types, page 214. Uncaught Exemptions, page 215. Using Try and Catch, page 216. Displaying a description of an exception, page 218. Multiple catch clauses, page 218. Nested try statements, page 220. Throw, page 222. Throws, page 223. Finally, page 224. Java built-in exceptions, page 226. Creating your own exception subclasses, page 227. Chained exceptions, page 230. Three recently added exceptions features, page 231. Using exceptions, page 232. Chapter 11, Multi-threaded Programming, page 233. The Java Threaded Model, page 234. Threaded Priorities, page 235. Synchronization, page 235. Messaging, page 236. The threaded class and the runnable interface, page 236. Excuse me. The main threaded, page 237. Creating a threaded, page 238. Implementing runnable, page 239. Extending thread, page 241. Choosing an approach, page 242. Creating multiple threads, page 242. Using isAlive and join, page 243. Threaded priorities, page 246. Synchronization, page 247. Using synchronized methods, page 247. The synchronized statement, page 249. Interthreaded communication, page 251. Deadlock, page 255. Suspending, resuming, and stopping threads, page 257. Obtaining a thread's state, page 259. Using multithreading, page 261. Chapter 12. Enumerations, autoboxing, and annotations, metadata, page 263. Enumerations, page 263. Enumeration fundamentals, page 263. The values and value of methods, page 266. Java enumerations are class types, page 267. Enumerations inherit enum, page 269. Another enumeration example, page 271. Type, wrappers, page 272. Character, page 273. Boolean, page 273. The numeric type wrappers, page 273. Autoboxing, page 274. Autoboxing and methods, page 275. Autoboxing/unboxing occurs in exceptions, page 276. Autoboxing/unboxing Boolean and character values, page 278. Autoboxing and unboxing helps prevent errors, page 278. A word of warning, page 279. Annotations metadata, page 279. Annotation basics, page 280. Specifying a retention policy, page 281. Obtaining annotations at runtime by use of reflection, page 281. The annotated element interface, page 286. Using default values, page 287. Marker annotations, page 288. Single member annotations, page 289. The built-in annotations, page 290. Type annotations, page 292. Repeating annotations, page 297. Some restrictions, page 299. Chapter 13. I/O applets and other topics, page 230. Page 301. I/O basics, page 301. Streams, page 302. Byte streams and character streams, page 302. The predefined streams, page 304. Reading console input, page 305. Reading characters, page 305. Reading strings, page 306. Writing console output, page 308. The print writer class, page 308. Reading and writing files, page 309. Automatically closing a file, page 315. Applet fundamentals, page 318. The transient and volatile modifiers, page 322. Using instance of, page 322. Script FP, page 324. Native methods, page 325. Problems with native methods, page 328. Using assert, page 328. Assertion enabling and disabling options, page 331. Static import, page 331. Invoking overloaded constructors through this, page 334. Compact API profiles, page 336. Chapter 14, Generics, page 337. What are generics? Page 338. A simple generics example, page 338. Generics work only with reference types, page 342. Generic types differ based on their type of arguments, page 342. How generics improve type safety, page 342. A generic class with two type parameters, page 345. The general form of a generic class, page 346. Bounded types, page 346. Using wildcard arguments, page 349. Bounded wildcards, page 352. Creating a generic method, page 356. Generic constructors, page 359. Generic interfaces, page 360. Raw types and legacy code, page 362. Generic class hierarchies, page 364. Using a generic superclass, page 365. A generic subclass, page 367. Runtime type comparisons within a generic hierarchy, page 368. Casting, page 370. Overriding methods in a generic class, page 371. Type interface with generics, page 372. Erasure, page 373. Bridge methods, page 374. Ambiguity errors, page 375. Some generic restrictions, page 377. Type parameters can't be instantialized, page 377. Restrictions on static members, page 377. Generic array restrictions, page 377. Generic exception restriction, page 379. Chapter 15, Lambda expressions, page 381. Introducing lambda expressions, page 382. Lambda expression fundamentals, page 382. Functional interfaces, page 383. Some lambda expression examples, page 384. Block lambda expressions, page 387. Generic functional interfaces, page 389. Passing lambda expressions as arguments, page 391. Lambda expressions and exceptions, page 394. Lambda expressions and variable capture, page 395. Method reference, page 396. Method reference to static methods, page 396. Method reference to instance methods, page 397. Method reference to generics, page 401. Constructor reference, page 404. Predefined functional interfaces, page 408. The Java library, chapter 16, string handling, page 413. The string constructors, page 414. String length, page 416. Special string operators, page 416. String literals, page 416. String concentrate. String concatenation, page 417. String concatenation with other data types, page 417. String conversion and toString, page 418. Character extraction, page 419. Character page 419. Get chars, page 419. Get bytes, page 420. 2 character array, page 420. String comparison, page 420. Equals and equals ignores case, page 421. Region matches, page 421. Starts with and ends with, page 422. Equals versus equals equals, 422. Compare to, page 423. Searching strings, page 424. Modifying a string, page 426. Substring, page 426. Concat, page 427. Replace, page 427. Trim, page 428. Data conversion using value of, page 428. Changing the case of characters within a string, page 429. Joining strings, page 430. Additional string methods, page 431. String buffer, page 432. String buffer constructors, page 432. Length and capacity, page 433. Ensure capacity, page 432. Sorry, page 443. Set length, page 433. Character at and set character at, page 434. Get characters, page 434. Append, page 435. Insert, page 435. Reverse, page 436. Delete and delete character at, page 436. Replace, page 437. Substring, page 437. Additional string buffer methods, page 438. String builder, page 439. Chapter 17, Exploring JavaLang, page 441. Primitive type wrappers, page 442. Number, page 442. Double and float, page 442. Understanding is infinite and is not, page 446. Byte, short, integer, and long, page 447. Character, page 455. Additions to character for Unicode code point support, page 458. Boolean, page 458. Void, page 460. Process, page 460. Runtime, page 461. Memory management, page 462. Executing other programs, page 464. Process builder, page 465. System, page 467. Using current time millis to time program execution, page 469. Using array copy, page 469. Environment properties, page 470. Object, page 471. Using clone and the clonable interface, page 471. Class, page 473. Class loader, page 477. Math, page 477. Trigonometric functions, page 477. Exponential functions, page 478. Rounding functions, page 478. Miscellaneous math methods, page 479. Strict math, page 481. Compiler, page 481. Thread group, and runnable, page 481. The runnable interface, page 481. Thread, page 482. Thread group, page 484. Thread local and inheritable thread local, page 488. Package, page 489. Runtime permission, page 490. Throwable, page 490. Security manager, page 490. Stack trace element, page 491. Enum, page 492. Class value, page 493. The character sequence interface, page 493. The comparable interface, page 493. The appendable interface, page 494. The iterable interface, page 494. The readable interface, page 495. The auto-closable interface, page 495. The threaded uncaught exception handler interface, page 495. The Java-Lang subpackages, page 495. Java-Lang annotation, page 496. Java-Lang instrument, page 496. Java-Lang invoke, page 496. Java-Lang management, page 496. Java-Lang ref, page 496. Java-Lang reflect, page 496. Chapter 18, Java Util, Part 1, The Collections Framework, page 497. Collections Overview, page 498. JDK 5, Changed the Collections Framework, page 500. Generics fundamentally changed the collections framework, page 500. Autoboxing facilities, the use of primitive types, page 500. For each style, for loop, page 500. The collection interface, page 501. The collection interface, page 501. The list interface, page 504. The set interface, page 504. The sorted set interface, page 506. The navigable set interface, page 507. The queue interface, page 508. The DQ interface, page 509. The collection classes, page 510. The array list class, page 511. The linked class, the linked list class, page 515. The hash set class, page 516. The linked hash set class, page 517. The tree set class, page 518. The priority queue class, page 519. The array DQ class, page 520. The enum set class, page 521. Accessing a collection via an iterator, page 521. Using an iterator, page 523. The for each alternative to initiators, page 525. Splitterators, page 526. Storing user-defined classes in collections, page 529. The random access interface, page 530. Working with maps, page 530. The map interfaces, page 531. The map classes, page 537. Comparators, page 542. Using a comparator, page 544. The collection algorithms, page 550. Arrays, page 556. The legacy classes and interfaces, page 561. The enumeration interface, page 562. Vector, page 562. Stack, page 566. Dictionary, page 568. Hash table, page 569. Priorities, page 572. Using store and load, page 576. Parting thoughts on collections, page 577. Chapter 19, Java Util Part 2, More Utility Classes, page 579. String Tokenizer, page 579. Bitset, page 581. Optional, optional double, optional int, and optional long, page 584. Date, page 586. Calendar, page 588. Gregorian calendar, page 591. Time zone, page 593. Simple time zone, page 594. Locale, page 594. Random, page 596. Observable, page 598. The observer interface, page 599. An observer example, page 599. Time and timer task, page 602. Currency, page 604. Formatter, page 605. The formatter constructors, page 605. The formatter methods, page 606. Formatting basics, page 607. Formatting strings and characters, page 609. Formatting numbers, page 609. Formatting time and date, page 610. The %n and %% specifiers, page 612. Specifying a minimum field within. Specifying a minimum field width, page 612. Specifying precision, page 614. Using the format flags, page 614. Justifying output, page 615. The space plus 0 and open parentheses flags, page 616. The comma flag, page 617. The hashtag flag, page 617. The uppercase option, page 617. Using an argument index, page 618. Closing a formatter, page 619. The Java printf connection, page 620. Scanner, page 620. The scanner constructors, page 620. Scanning basics, page 620. Some scanner examples, page 624. Setting delimiters, page 628. Other scanner features, page 629. The resource bundle, list resource bundle, and property resource bundle classes, page 630. Miscellaneous utility classes and interfaces, page 635. The Java util subpackages, page 635. Java util concurrent, Java util concurrent atomic, and Java util concurrent locks, page 636. Java util function, page 636. Java util jar, page 639. Java util logging, page 639. Java util prefs, page 639. Java util rejects, page 639. Java util spy, page 639. Java util stream, page 639. Java util zip, page 639. Chapter 20, Input-Output, Exploring Java I/O, page 641. The I/O classes and interfaces, page 641. File, page 642. Directories, page 645. Using file name filer, page 646. The list files alternative, page 647. Creating directories, page 648. The auto-closable, closable, and flushable interfaces, page 648. I/O exceptions, page 649. 2 ways to close a stream, page 649. The stream classes, page 650. The byte streams, page 651. Input stream, page 651. Output stream, page 651. File input stream, page 652. File output stream, page 654. Byte array input stream, page 656. Byte array output stream, page 658. Filtered byte streams, page 659. Buffered byte streams, page 659. Sequence input stream, page 663. Print stream, page 665. Data output stream and data input stream, page 667. Random access file, page 669. The character streams, page 670. Reader, page 670. Writer, page 670. File reader, page 672. File writer, page 673. Character array reader, page 674. Character array writer, page 675. Buffered reader, page 660. Buffered reader, page 676. Buffered writer, page 678. Pushback reader, page 678. Print writer, page 679. The console class, page 680. Serialization, page 682. Serializable, page 682. Externalizable, page 683. Object output, page 683. Object output stream, page 684. Object input, page 685. Object input stream, page 685. A serialization example, page 686. Stream benefits, page 688. Chapter 21. Exploring NIO, page 689. The NIO classes, page 689. NIO fundamentals, page 690. Buffers, page 690. Channels, page 691. Character sets and selectors, page 693. Enhancements added to NIO by JDK7, page 694. The path interface, page 694. The files class, page 695. The paths class, page 698. The file attribute interface, page 698. The file system, file systems, and file store classes, page 700. Using NIO system, page 700. Use NIO for channel-based I/O, page 700. Use NIO for stream-based I/O, page 709. Use NIO for path and file system operations, page 712. Pre-JDK7 channel-based examples, page 719. Read a file, pre-JDK7, page 720. Write to a file, pre-JDK7, page 723. Chapter 22, Networking, page 727. Networking Basics, page 727. The Networking Class and Interfaces, page 728. INET Addresses, page 729. Factory Methods, page 729. Instance Methods, page 730. INET 4 addresses and INET 6 addresses, page 731. TCP/IP client sockets, page 731. URL, page 735. URL connection, page 736. HTTP URL connection, page 739. The URI class, page 741. Cookies, page 741. TCP IP server sockets, page 741. Datagrams, page 742. Datagram sockets, page 742. Datagram packet, page 743. A datagram example, page 744. Chapter 23. The applet class, page 747. Two types of applets, page 747. Applet basics, page 747. The applet class, page 749. Applet architecture, page 751. An applet skeleton, page 751. Applet initialization and termination, page 753. Overriding update, page 754. Simple applet display methods, page 754. Requesting repainting, page 756. A simple banner applet, page 757. Using the status window, page 759. The HTML applet tag, page 760. Passing parameters to applets, page 761. Improving the banner applet, page 763. Get document base and get code base, page 764. Applet context and show document, page 765. The autoclip interface, page 767. The applet stub interface, page 767. Outputting to the console, page 767. Chapter 24, Event Handling, page 769. Two event handling mechanisms, page 769. The delegation event model, page 770. Events, page 770. Event sources, page 770. Event listeners, page 771. Event classes, page 771. The action event class, page 773. The adjustment event class, page 773. The component event class, page 774. The container event class, page 774. The focus event class, page 775. The input event class, page 775. The item event class, page 776. The key event class, page 777. The mouse event class, page 778. The mouse wheel event class, page 779. The text event class, page 780. The window event class, page 780. Sources of events, page 781. Event listener interfaces, page 782. The action listener interface, page 783. The adjustment listener interface, page 783. The component listener interface, page 783. The container listener interface, page 783. The focus listener interface, page 783. The item listener interface, page 783. The key listener interface, page 784. The mouse listener interface, page 784. The mouse motion listener interface, page 784. The mouse wheel listener interface, page 784. The text listener interface, page 784. The window focused listener interface, page 785. The window listener interface, page 785. Using the delegation event model, page 785. Handling mouse events, page 785. Handling keyboard events, page 788. Adapter classes, page 791. Inner classes, page 793. Anonymous inner classes, page 795. Chapter 25. Introducing the AWT working with Windows, graphics, and text, page 797. AWT classes, page 798. Window fundamentals, page 800. Component, page 800. Container, page 801. Panel, page 801. Window, page 801. Frame, page 801. Canvas, page 801. Working with frame windows, page 802. Setting the window dimensions, page 802. Hiding and showing a window, page 802. Setting a window's title, page 802. Closing a frame window, page 803. Creating a frame window in an AWT-based applet, page 803. Handling events in a frame window, page 805. Creating a windowed program, page 809. Displaying information within a window, page 811. Introducing graphics, page 811. Drawing lines, page 811. Drawing rectangles, page 812. Drawing ellipses and circles, page 812. Drawing arcs, page 812. Drawing polygons, page 813. Demonstrating the drawing methods, page 813. Sizing graphics, page 814. Working with color, page 815. Color methods, page 816. Setting the current graphics color, page 817. A color demonstration applet, page 817. Setting the paint mode, page 818. Working with fonts, page 819. Determining the available fonts, page 821. Creating and selecting a font, page 812. Obtaining font information, page 824. Managing text output using font metrics, page 825. Displaying multiple lines of text, page 825. Centering text, page 828. Multi-line text alignment, page 829. Chapter 26. Using AWT controls, layout managers, and menus, page 883. AWT control fundamentals, page 834. Adding and removing controls, page 834. Responding to controls, page 834. The headless exceptions, page 835. Labels, page 835. Using buttons, page 836. Handling buttons, page 836. Applying checkboxes, page 840. Handling checkboxes, page 840. Checkbox group, page 842. Choice controls, page 844. Handling choice lists, page 844. Using lists, page 846. Handling lists, page 847. Managing scroll bars, page 849. Handling scroll bars, page 850. Using a text field, page 852. Handling a text field, page 853. Using a text area, page 854. Understanding layout managers, page 855. Flow layout, page 856. Border layout, page 856. Page 858. Using insets, page 860. Grid layout, page 861. Card layout, page 862. Grid bag layout, page 865. Menu bars and menus, page 870. Dialog boxes, page 876. File dialog, page 880. A word about overriding paint, page 882. Chapter 27. Images, page 885. File formats, page 885. Image fundamentals creating, loading, and displaying, page 886. Creating an image object, page 886. Loading an image, page 886. Displaying an image, page 887. Image observer, page 888. Double buffering, page 889. Media tracker, page 892. Image producer, page 895. Memory image source, page 895. Image consumer, page 897. Pixel grabber, page 897. Image filter, page 899. Crop image filter, page 900. RGB image filter, page 902. 902. Additional image classes, page 913. Chapter 28. The concurrency utilities. The concurrent API packages, page 916. Java util concurrent, page 916. Java util concurrent atomic, page 917. Java util concurrent locks, page 917. Using synchronization objects, page 917. Semaphore, page 918. Countdown latch, page 913. Cyclic barrier, page 925. Exchanger, page 927. Phaser, page 930. Using an executor. Using an executor. Page 937. A simple executor example. Page 937. Using callable and future. Using callable and future. Page 939. The time unit enumeration. Page 942. The concurrent collections. Page 943. Locks. Page 943. Atomic operations. Page 946. Parallel programming via the fork/join framework. Page 947. The main fork/join classes. Page 948. The divide and conquer strategy. The divide and conquer strategy. Page 951. The simple fork/join example. Page 952. Understanding the impact of the level of parallelism. Page 955. An example that uses recursive task V. Page 958. Executing a task asynchronously. Page 960. Canceling a task. Page 961. Determining a task's completion status. Page 961. Restarting a task. Page 961. Things to explore. Page 962. Some fork/join tips. Page 963. The concurrency utilities versus Java's traditional approach. Page 964. Chapter 29. The Stream API. Page 965. Stream Basics. Page 965. Stream Interfaces. Page 966. How to obtain a stream. Page 969. A simple stream example. Page 969. Reduction operations. Page 973. Using parallel streams. Page 979. Mapping. Page 978. Collecting. Page 982. Iterators and streams. Page 986. Use an iterator with a stream. Page 986. Use splitterator. Page 987. More to explore in the Stream API. Page 990. Chapter 30. Regular expressions and other packages. Page 991. The core Java API packages. Page 991. Regular expression processing. Page 993. Pattern. Page 994. Matcher. Page 994. Regular expression syntax. Page 995. Demonstrating pattern matching. Page 995. Two pattern matching options. Page 1001. Exploring regular expressions. Page 1001. Reflection. Page 1001. Remote Method Invocation, RMI. Page 1005. A simple client/server application using RMI. Page 1006. Formatting date and time with Java text. Page 1009. Date format classes. Page 1009. Simple date format class. Page 1011. The time and date API added by JDK 8. Page 1013. Time and date fundamentals. Page 1013. Formatting date and time. Page 1015. Parsing date and time strings. Page 1017. Other things to explore in Java time. Page 1018. Introducing GUI Programming with Swing. Chapter 31. Introducing Swing. Page 1021. The Origins of Swing. Page 1021. Swing is built on the AWT. Page 1022. Two key Swing features. Page 1022. Swing components are lightweight. Page 1022. Swing supports a pluggable lock and feel. Page 1022. The MVC connection. Page 1023. Components and containers. Page 1024. Components. Page 1024. Containers. Page 1025. The top-level container panes. Page 1025. The Swing packages, page 1026. A simple Swing application, page 1026. Event handling, page 130. Page 1030. Create a Swing applet, page 1033. Painting in Swing, page 1036. Painting fundamentals, page 1036. Compute the paintable area, page 1037. A paint example, page 1037. Exploring Swing, page 1041. JLabel and image icon, page 1041. JText field, page 1043. The Swing buttons, page 1045. JButton, page 1045. JToggle button, page 1047. Checkboxes, page 1049. Radio buttons, page 1051. JTabbed pane, page 1053. JScroll pane, page 1056. JList, page 1058. JCombo box, page 1061. Trees, page 1063. JTable, page 1066. Chapter 33. Introducing Swing menus, page 1069. Menu basics, page 1069. An overview of JMenu bar, JMenu, and JMenu item, page 1071. JMenu bar, page 1071. JMenu, page 1072. JMenu item, page 1073. Create a main menu, page 1074. Add mnemonics and accelerators to menu items, page 1078. Add images and tooltips to menu items, page 1080. Use radio button menu item and checkbox menu item, 1081. Create pop-up menu, page 1083. Create a toolbar, page 1087. Use actions, page 1089. Put the entire menu demo program together, page 1095. Continuing your exploration of Swing, page 1101. Part 4. Introducing GUI Programming to JavaFX. Chapter 34. Introducing JavaFX GUI Programming, page 1105. JavaFX Basic Concepts, page 1106. The JavaFX Packages, page 1106. The Stage and Scene Classes, page 1106. Nodes and Scene Graphics. Nodes and Scene Graphs, page 1007. Layouts, page 1107. The Application Class and Lifecycle Methods, page 1107. Launching a JavaFX application, page 1108. A JavaFX application skeleton, page 1108. Compiling and running a JavaFX program, page 1111. The application thread, page 1112. A simple JavaFX control label, page 1112. Using buttons and events, page 1114. Using buttons and events, page 1114. Event basics, page 1115. Introducing the button control, page 1115. Demonstrating event handling and the button, page 1116. Drawing directly on a canvas, page 1119. Chapter 35. Exploring JavaFX controls, page 1125. Using image and image view, page 1125. Adding an image to a label, page 1128. Using an image with a button, page 1130. Toggle button, page 1133. Radio button, page 1135. Handling change events in a toggle group, page 1138. An alternative way to handle radio buttons, page 1135. Checkbox, page 1142. List view, page 1146. List view scroll bars, page 1149. Enabling multiple selections, page 1150. Combo box, page 1151. Text field, page 1154. Scroll plane, page 1157. Tree view, page 1160. Introducing effects and transforms, page 1164. Effects, page 1165. Transforms, page 1166. Demonstrating effects and transforms, page 1167. Adding tooltips, page 1170. Disabling a control, page 1170. Chapter 36. Introducing JavaFX menus, page 1171. Main menu basics, page 1171. An overview of menu bar, menu, and menu item, page 1173. Menu bar, page 1173. Menu, page 1174. Menu item, page 1174. Create a main menu, page 1175. Add mnemonics and accelerators to menu items, page 1180. Add images to menu items, page 1182. Use radio menu item and check menu item, page 1183. Create a context menu, page 1185. Create a toolbar, page 1189. Put the entire menu demo program together, page 1191. Continuing your exploration of JavaFX, page 1196. 5. Part 5. Applying Java. Chapter 37. Java Beans, page 1119. What is a Java Bean? Page 1119. Advantages of Java Beans, page 1200. Introspection, page 1200. Design patterns for properties, page 1200. Design patterns for events, page 1202. Methods and design patterns, page 1202. Using the Bean Info interface, page 1202. Bound and constrained properties, page 1203. Persistence, page 1203. Customizers, page 1203. The Java Beans API, page 1204. Introspector, page 1206. Property descriptor, page 1206. Event set descriptor, page 1206. Event set descriptor, page 1206. Method descriptor, page 1206. A bean example, page 1206. Introducing servlets, page 1211, chapter 38. Background, page 1211. The life cycle of a servlet, page 1212. Servlet development options, page 1212. Using Tomcat, page 1213. A simple servlet, page 1214. Create and compile the servlet source code, page 1215. Start Tomcat, page 1215. Start a web browser and request the servlet, page 1216. The Servlet API, page 1216. The JavaX servlet package, page 1216. The servlet interface, page 1217. The servlet config interface, page 1218. The servlet request interface, page 1218. The servlet response interface, page 1218. The generic servlet class, page 1220. The servlet input stream class, page 1220. The servlet output stream class, page 1220. The servlet exception classes, page 1220. Reading servlet parameters, page 1220. The JavaX servlet HTTP package, page 1222. The HTTP servlet request interface, page 1222. The HTTP servlet response interface, page 1222. The HTTP session interface, page 1223. The cookie class, page 1224. The HTTP servlet class, page 1225. Handling HTTP requests and responses, page 1227. Handling HTTP GET responses. Handling HTTP GET requests, page 1027. Handling HTTP POST requests, page 1229. Using cookies, page 1230. Session tracking, page 1232. Appendix, using Java's documentation comments, page 1235. The Java doc tags, page 1235. At author, page 1236. At code, page 1236. At deprecated, page 1236. At docroot, page 1237. At exception, page 1237. At inherit doc, page 1237. At link, page 1237. At link plane, page 1237. At literal, page 1237. At param, page 1237. At return, page 1238. At C, page 1238. At serial, page 1238. At serial data, page 1238. At serial field, page 1238. At since, page 1238. At throws, page 1239. At value, page 1239. At version, page 1239. The general form of a documentation comment, page 1239. What Java doc outputs, page 1239. An example that uses documentation comments, page 1240. Index, page 1243.